Good evening. It is 7 p.m. on August 24th, and we are at City Hall, for the purpose of holding our second school board meeting of the month. We'll start with the St. Cloud District 742 mission statement. Our mission is to create a safe and caring climate and culture in which we prepare, engage, educate, empower, and inspire all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. Mr. Mose, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Mr. Chair, Bruce Henches.
Here.
Al Dahlgren.
Here.
Jerry Von Korf.
Here.
Monica Segura-Schwartz.
Here.
Jeff Polrice.
Here.
Shannon Haas.
Here.
Bruce Mose here. Let the record show, Mr. Chair, that we're joined at this evening's meeting by Willie Jett, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Marcia Beisch, Assistant Superintendent of Schools and Leadership Development, Tracy Bowe, Executive Director of Human Resources, Gary Ganji, Executive Director of Technology and Support Services, Lori Posch, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Carol Potter, Executive Director of Student Services, Special Education, Amy Scalrud, Interim Executive Director of Business Services, and Tammy Deland, Director of Communications and Community Engagement.
Thank you, Mr. Mose. First up on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board routinely adopts without debate. Any single member of the board may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. The full text of items can be found at the end of the agenda. On tonight's consent agenda, we have item A, approval of the agenda. B, approval of the meeting minutes from July 29th and August 9th. C, approval of payment of bills and other financial transactions in the grand total amount of $3,331,334.64. D is approval of personnel staff changes. E is the acceptance of grant awards and donations. And F is Quarry View Education Center change orders totaling plus $8,498.01. At this time, I'm going to make a couple of changes to the agenda. As far as item A, approval of tonight's agenda, I would like to add a closed meeting or a closed session at the end of the agenda. So when we're all done with everything, when we would normally adjourn, we're going to close the meeting and move into a closed session in the room next door, and this is being closed for negotiations strategy. And then we'll come out from that, come back into session, and adjourn the meeting. So nothing will happen after we close as far as work being done by the board. Then also on item E, the acceptance of grant awards and donations. I am personally in there for a donation item number 1, so I'm going to just recuse myself here from the approval of the donation from myself. So if I vote yes on the consent agenda, that is with the recusal for item number 1. Is there anyone else that would have anything on the consent agenda that they would be looking to change? I'm looking for a motion then and a second.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, Mr. Henches.
I'll make the second now.
Mr. Polrice. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing no discussion, Mr. Mose, would you call roll?
Mr. Chair, maker of the motion, Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Second maker of the motion, Jeff Polrice.
Yes.
Monica Segura-Schwartz.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes. Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
That'd be yes. Okay. Next up is information items. And the first item on the agenda is the summer programs update.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Jett, and executive team. It's a pleasure to be here tonight talking about summer learning. As you know, summer school doesn't end in June. It goes on all summer long, and all of a sudden, it's right around the corner, gonna start again. My name is Patricia King. I'm the Title I Director and School Support, and Rebecca Gronwald. I'm gonna let Rebecca introduce herself because she's new to this group. I've met many of you before.
I am new. Thank you for letting me be here. I'm a graduate of Apollo High School, and I've also been in the district for the last 20 years, 18 years in fourth grade, 13 at Westwood, and then 5 at Jefferson before that.
Thank you. So now we're going to wrap up our little programs that went on all throughout the school district over the summer. As you can see, we had a number of summer programs going on, and starting with targeted services, Title I, we do a collaborative program there. ESY, Young Scholars Summer Camp, Immersion Summer Camp, Summer Spanish and Chinese, Credit Recovery, Career and Tech Ed, ABE Summer Programs, and the Packrat. We were fortunate to serve over 4,400 students this summer in various capacities. And keep in mind, in the summer, we like to keep our numbers smaller. That way we can really target and hone in on certain skills that students may need support with. Targeted services, we're going to highlight that first. This is a summer program for students needing additional learning opportunities. What's nice about this program is it's very self-funded. In other words, it's seat time generated. So students come and we generate revenue. So it's really interesting to put together a program that you don't really have a budget for. You have to build a program based on a number of kids that you believe will be coming to that program. And so the nice part about targeted services is that it does fund it. What it doesn't do is it doesn't help us pay for things like coordination, staff development, and professional development for teachers. So we've been lucky to use Title I funding to hire Rebecca as a coordinator to help us put all of that together. And that targeted services program not only happens in the summer for 4 weeks, but it also goes on in the school year. So we usually have a couple days a week that we have kids meeting with teachers after school to provide extra learning opportunities. We usually focus on literacy, math, social emotional learning is usually done through partnerships with that include Title I, St.Cloud State, Gray's Barnyard, Sauk River, Watershed, AmeriCorps, Math and Reading, fortunate for that, the Yes Food Network, and Community Grassroots Solution. And I'm thinking we may have missed a couple more in there, but I think one of our new ones this year was the DNR, and that was really a fun partnership for one of our schools to have. We had targeted services at all K-8 sites. Discovery had to be housed over at Oak Hill because of construction, and Westwood was over at Madison. And otherwise, most every site tries to have their own program, and we encourage that every single summer, and we'll continue to do that. Over the last couple of years, we've been able to actually add curriculum. Prior to 2 years ago, teachers had to kind of make it up and on their own, which they did a great job of, but we realized that in order for us to have a focused summer school program, we needed to have specific curriculum that aligns with our current curriculum and standards in our district. And we also added Avid Units this year, and I'm going to let Rebecca talk briefly about that.
This winter, Jane Greeny-Schill and I worked on creating some Avid Units that would help support the junior high targeted services and summer school programs. They took the Avid strategies to use with literacy. They could use topics that the kids were interested in. We did forensics, we did bullying, we did soccer, basketball. We just did a number of units where they could take all the Avid, or some of the Avid strategies, and incorporate it into their instruction.
The challenge to get 6th through 8th graders to come to summer school sometimes, so we recognized that, and we wanted to make sure we were really thinking about what they wanted, not just what we had to offer them. This slide's a little bit darker, but you can see all the different slides. The other school that partnered was Lincoln and Talahi because of the construction over at Talahi. But on this particular slide, which many of you have, you can really see the specificity that the program was honing in on. And every program, again, had math and literacy and social emotional, and the social emotional comes through the community partnership. So it's really a K-8 program, and depending on the school and where they were being served would depend on the number of, or the grade levels that were served at that particular school. Family engagement was something new that we added to targeted services this year, and the reason we added that was because Title I requires family engagement. And so this past year, we've had someone working with us specifically on parent engagement and looking at ways that we can support learning at home, really focusing on that. And so this year, one of the things that our coordinators did, Rebecca and Susie Moss, another individual that was working with us, put together a lot of literacy and math games, and they were homemade games. And the reason they were homemade games is because we wanted to help families understand that you don't have to buy everything to work with your kids and learn with your kids. And so through a lot of research and checking around and a lot of things that teachers just have and know about, we were able to put together a lot of various games. And the fun thing about these games is that they were actually taught to the kids in the school during their program time, so the kids could go home and teach their parents and the rest of the family members how to use the games. We wanted to make sure, the one rule that I had was that you were not to ask for those games to be brought back to the school. Those were things that were to be left at home for families. So we have a lot of positive feedback here, I think, from our teachers and our parents. This is just some of it. Some things like, it'd be fun next time to have the older kids work with the younger kids maybe and teach them the games. The parents really liked these, teachers liked it, and the teachers really liked the fact that we were bringing in something else from the outside. And so, do you have anything you want to talk about with those games?
It was nice because we had everything ready so the teachers didn't have to do one more thing. We made math checkers, some board games with root words, and some with beginning blend sounds for the primary kids. So we split them up, primary and intermediate, and then just gave them the counters and the boards and everything they needed. And the directions were in 3 different languages, so it would be more user-friendly for all the families.
And they were printed and in the packet. They were all put in Ziploc bags. We used a lot of Ziploc bags this summer, and I can tell you where to buy them really cheap if you ever really want to know. We were buying lots of them. Kennedy Targeted Services. I'm going to let Rebecca talk a little bit more about our targeted services, some of the specific programs, because we got some really cool things, I think, that happened, and she was more boots on the ground this summer than I was.
This is one of my favorite pictures. Shara Stone was the coordinator at Kennedy, and she sent me this picture. She said, oh my gosh, they just pulled out their bags spontaneously and started playing their games at lunch. So this is the Kennedy kiddos playing math checkers while they're enjoying their Yes Network lunch. At one of the sites that was kind of exciting for me, we did a SMART camp at the Salvation Army for the Smart Kids program. And, I think I'm out of order, I'm sorry. But that was exciting. It was new this year. We had summer school right at the Salvation Army. It was staffed by 2 district teachers and then the Salvation Army staff, and some volunteers came in, and each day the kiddos got to they had a literacy activity, and they read a book. Nope, they had a morning meeting, they read a book, did a literacy activity, and then they also got to work with a Yes Network volunteer on art activities. And what she did is she made puppets, and then they made their puppet theater, and they did puppet shows. One day they read the book Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and they had fake meatballs, and they got to write their own recipes for food. And one day they made butter, and they got to write directions step by step how to make butter, and then they made the butter, and some kiddos got to take it home. They loved to try it. It was a lot of hands-on activities, and it was really fun. It was an age range from kindergarten to 8th graders in the one setting, but it was at the Salvation Army. And we did 3 programs off school sites. We did one at Westwood Village, which was similar. We worked in partnership with the Yes Network, and one at the Promise Neighborhood, where they had reading and writing and STEM activities, and then they did some cooking for measurement activities. And every time I got to go to these, the kids were excited at Westwood Village, the kids were there early. At the Promise neighborhood, I walked in and they wanted to show me their junk sculptures, and they're like, here, look what I made. It was really fun to see.
One of the things, as you can tell from what Rebecca's talking about, is we know that a lot of times we expect our kids to come to us. So what we're trying to work on is a process where we maybe go out to where they're at, especially in the summer. First of all, transportation is extremely expensive, and that's fine, but let's think about ways that we know where kids are at that probably need some additional support during the summer. So this was our first kind of trial run this summer of trying some of these things. And so Promise Neighborhood was another one that Rebecca had just talked about, and it was really fun because we had John from over at Talahi came to me one day and said, you know, Kate put me in touch with you and said, maybe through Title I or something, we can hire a teacher for our summer program. We've got everything we need. We don't need transportation. And we've got all the supplies and everything. We just need to pay for a teacher. And through targeted services and Title I support, we were able to do that. And so this is an example of their program over there looking at geometry and measurement. And one of the requirements that we have in targeted services is that we're constantly looking at the standards. It's not just kind of whatever you want to do. It's really based around a focus area and looking at the standards that students might need support with, but doing it in a way that's really fun. So how much more fun can you have than baking cookies and thinking about geometry and measurement during that time? Talahi, another one here, practice of science, scientific inquiry, looking at investigating the phenomenon of force. I just love this slide and how these kids are really looking at the fan there and thinking about force, and they're demonstrating all of the projects that they worked on to the other students, which is always good too, to get them up and speaking and writing about what they're working on. Rebecca talked a little bit about the summer camp over at the Salvation Army, and that's one of our partners that we work with our McKinney-Vento grant. And we know there are a lot of students that are at the Salvation Army in the summer for lots of different reasons, and we know that the clientele changes over there quite often. And so we wanted to just dip our toe in the water, so to speak, this year to kind of get a feel for what could we add to the Salvation Army maybe that they don't already have over there. And so this was, I remember you talking about building it into primary and intermediate and kind of breaking up the kids a little bit. And in a situation like the Salvation Army, you really don't know who's going to be there from one day to the next. But to be able to come in and provide some kind of enrichment for them, I think really meant a lot. I'm going to talk about the story about the little pigs.
One of my favorite stories is the true story of the three little pigs. So the teachers read the true story of the three little pigs, and then each child got a little baggie with marshmallows and toothpicks, and they got to make their own structures. And one of the older child in the picture, he was so excited. He was using up all the extra marshmallows, and they couldn't get him to stop. That's what he wanted to keep doing. So anytime we could get the kids engaged, the kids were all engaged in these activities. They were having fun.
And these are some examples of partnerships that we're looking forward to doing in the future. I think the Salvation Army one we could probably replicate during the school year. Some of the others maybe not, but we'll see. At least we're starting with some partnerships and thinking outside the box a little bit. This was an example. Rebecca talked about the morning meeting when you come in and kind of grounding everyone and getting them ready here for the day. And then we're going to, you can talk about that.
Sorry, one of the exciting things about the morning meeting was at the beginning of the week, kiddos didn't necessarily want to participate, and the teacher in that picture, she was so excited when she called me. She said, oh my gosh, everybody participated today. And that's kind of a big deal, just to get the buy-in from the kids.
Yeah, because this is when you're living in that kind of environment, and you don't have a lot of consistency, to have someone there every day for like 4 or 5 days and wanting to do things with you and there were, I think, quite a few kids that came to this program. So now we're going to kind of change gears a little bit, talk about extended school year. And this is our, for special education students, it's looking at mastery of critical skills and making sure that those students are able to not regress during the summer months. And it's interesting, each of these programs have very unique not necessarily requirements behind them, but they all have unique ways that you identify students for different programs. So it's nice that we can have such an array, because if we only had one set of summer school, we'd miss out on serving a lot of kids. So ESY is really for special education students. And so there's a lot of ways that you can deliver ESY, either at home, in the school, community. This one happened to be delivered at Madison, Tech, and Colts, and you can see the number of students and staff in each of the programs. And extended school year and targeted services followed the same calendar, and we have followed the same calendar. And the reason for that is because we really wanted to be financially responsible when it came to busing. So as much as possible, we were trying to share busing costs back and forth. And so that was always really important. Young Scholars, again, had a summer camp with an engineering focus. And these were students that were entering grades 2 through 6. It was held at Madison. They designed things like airdrop packages, bubble wands, earthquake-safe buildings, and Mars rovers. And I didn't get a chance to see those, but I think those Mars rovers would have been kind of interesting to watch. Immersion Summer Camp, another program that we have. This is a great camp, and it seems to be extremely successful because it offers students a lot of opportunities to use speaking, reading, writing, and listening experiences prior to the start of school. So this camp is really open to students who are going to be new to Spanish or Chinese immersion, but they're also open for students who are currently in those programs. So the coordinator of this program has said this is an extremely integral part of the immersion program, and they really look forward to holding it every year. And they have as you can see, 50 students at Madison and 66 in Clearview in August is a pretty good high number of students attending. Over at McKinley, Credit Recovery, a good summer again. They had a really nice program there last year, and they were looking at the 662 students who participated. 37 of those graduated, and of the students that participated, almost a little over 38,000 students picked up extra credits or units. So that was really nice to see that we have an opportunity for kids to really catch up in the summer. Career One, now these are some programs through Career and Tech Education with Stearns Benton Employment Training Agency. Each of these, there's 3 programs, they're each just a little bit different. This one really works on work readiness training skills. Really the realistic work world is what they're looking at, and prevents regression during the school year. And the students work with staff and mentors, and they perform actual work projects and develop a job search portfolio, which is extremely important as you're going out into the work world and thinking about putting together a portfolio at an early age, and also that opportunity to participate in teamwork activities. Great experience for kids, and this is a credit-bearing course. Youth Build is another opportunity, and this was for 16 to 24-year-olds over at Tech High School to work on construction projects. Things like industry-recognized credentials training, work readiness, life skills, thinking about leadership and community service activities, working on or attaining your high school diploma or GED or equivalent, credit-bearing courses. And I really appreciate having these kinds of, we just don't have always the college-bound students, so career and tech ed is extremely important in our community, and it provides a lot of job opportunities for a lot of students to go through programs such as this. Star Robotics Camp, again, a week-long camp, and in this one, students learned how to build and program robots. And as everyone would know, the future is in programming and building robots. So adult basic education is another program that's been real successful. We had daytime classes, evening classes for EL. Other ones were, these were located at the Great River Regional Library. Other classes were held at La Cruz townhouses, so you can see that we're kind of branching out here, not just having things in one specific location, or it isn't necessarily you come to us and we'll serve you. We're out in the community being seen, and the Belle Claire Estates. And so we really picked up a lot of students with the EL classes that were held this summer. There's also ABE programming and tutoring that was held at the police outpost. Pilot program for employment and education. That's a lot about the workplace skills, working on those. And that was kind of a nice stipend-funded grant through Career Solutions. We don't see a lot of those in the summer, so it was nice to see that. And then some one-to-one tutoring and citizenship preparation. And those kinds of programs go on all year. And the other program that we have that truly travels around the district is the Packrat Bus. And that comes, the slogan is, we'll come to a neighborhood near you. Check out your favorite book. Our book is open to children of all ages. And so this program has had a lot of support and has really grown from the ground up. Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays during the summer. I thought the really cool thing, and I think a lot of us would believe, that if a student checks a book out at the very beginning of the summer, and somehow or another that book got lost or whatever, misplaced, who knows, maybe now you're getting ready for school and all of a sudden you find it, you can take it back to school. Whatever school you want to take it to, you can just take it back. And so I think that's, and if a student needs and wants a book home for the whole summer, well, more power to them, because they probably need that book.
I know this was a favorite activity at the Promised Neighborhood program this summer, too.
They had a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Here are the routes. Here are the number of kids that were served. And the average total over on the side, the number 102 should really be 305. But you can see that the total books checked out were over 6,000 books. So you can see that through the process of through the entire summer, this has really grown. And I think a lot of kids just expect the bus to be in their neighborhood. So they're looking for the bus. And that's great that they're looking for the bus. And it's nice because they have something to look forward to. Sponsors for the Leaf, it was the Leaf Foundation, District 742, and St.Cloud Rotary Club, and I'm happy to say that our Title I program funds some of the stipends for some of the individuals who are on those routes out supporting kids, so that's kind of a nice little partnership that we have. The other one of the last partnerships here that I want to just talk about is our Yes Food Network. They served approximately 55,000 meals this summer. They added hot meals, which is really kind of a nice thing. Last year, or all the years we've been doing this, it's always been cold meals, but now it's been hot meals. And I believe Rebecca had said that the hot meals are mostly at noon. You want to give kind of some examples of what they serve?
Breakfast, they had whole wheat Pop-Tarts, fruit, string cheese. At lunch, though, I saw macaroni and cheese. I saw pulled pork sandwiches, sloppy joes, and I didn't see much food getting dumped, which was really refreshing.
Very. So you can see that we served at all K-8 targeted services sites, all the different sites that are up there. We realized that we were not serving breakfast or lunch with ESY, and we made the connection immediately this week, and they will be serving ESY next year, so that was great. And I think what's really nice about this is they don't just come to the schools. They served at Westwood Village. All of our athletes are served meals. They really want to work with our district and make sure that they're providing some support. And the other thing they opened up this year is they were serving at the public library, but also the Yes Network partnered up with some of the apartment buildings around the town. And the landlords would let them come in and set up meals to be served in some of those areas. So that's real different. That's a real out-of-the-box kind of thinking, I thought. So it was really nice to see that. So with that, that was our summer, and we didn't really sit around a lot, as you can tell. Rebecca was very busy, but we're really happy to have these opportunities to provide such quality summer programming, and there's a lot more we could do. We just had to take a couple of years here and get a framework laid out so we knew where we could go next. So next year, there might even be more. Any questions?
Bruce Mose.
First of all, thank you, Pat. Thank you, Rebecca. It's a really wonderful report. I'm always excited when I see in the paragraph the words learning and partnership in the same sentence, in the same paragraphs. To many of us, of course, the word learning is always attached to teaching and learning. And then that's remindful that the community is the partnerships in the community are very much a part of that equation of success. We know that the pillars of student success are certainly the responsibility of the student, then the families, certainly the schools, but then indispensable are partnerships in our community. And I'm familiar with many, many of these, and then some are new that I haven't heard about before. So my first question is then, how do we, in the district, how do we go about seeking, building, sustaining these community partnerships? How does that happen?
I think once you've made the connection with the building and with some of the teachers and administrators, that's where the partnership begins. And once there's value placed on that partnership, then the word gets out. And some of these I've seen kind of circle around to different schools. They start with one school and then they get connected to another school. And I think that we know that in many ways we've just scratched the surface on some of our partnerships. So what I think about, my first example was John over at Talahi talking to Kate one day about, I really need to find out how I can get some additional support. So just making that initial contact, and I've thought about the promised neighborhood, but everybody gets busy and you kind of do your thing.
Sure.
So now that I've made the contact with John and Rebecca's made the contact with John, we've already started talking about what we could do in the summer. So it's, or in the school year. So it's those little opportunities that you have to start to build a relationship with someone. And that's, I always believe, where it starts. And once you've got that, it's kind of getting your foot in the door. So it's something we are very aware of and want to continue.
Well, I think the summation of all of the sum total of all of these partnerships fulfills what we call the community or the collective impact, the collective impact that is necessary to support the needs of all of our children and the specific needs of some of our children. And as you were describing these programs, Pat, and looking at your pictures and your narratives here, it occurred to me that these programs are really in many ways from nearly the cradle to career, right from the beginning all the way through career. I think that's a really important highlight that we note. My second question then is, how do we measure in any manner that we can think of, how do we measure the outcomes that we're targeting our services towards?
We've started this year kind of dabbling with the STAR assessment a little bit, and so we've been working with Dr. Sylvia Huff on looking at ways that we can do more pre and post testing. And so we just had a conversation with her the other day about how we could start that next year. And up to this point, it's been little building blocks. First of all, we had no curriculum, so now we have curriculum. Now we have some kind of an organized effort here in what we're trying to do. And so we feel like with all of summer programming, we've just built our foundation. And now part of that, now we know what we absolutely have to do is we have to measure not whether we're effective. But unless you have a system in place, you can't really measure it. Okay. And so that's our next step, is really looking at the measurement of it, because I'd like to be able to show you some data, and data that would be meaningful for students in these programs, because there isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all measurement, so we have to really think about that. So that's a good question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Monica.
Hi, thank you for coming. You have very nice presentation, and I have several questions, so please bear with me. So following up Bruce's about measuring, do you do any type of assessment for literacy or math?
Yes, I'm going to let Rebecca talk about that.
Some of the teachers did do some assessments, not all of them. At the beginning, I was just getting familiar with the curriculum, and I went to Pat's office one day and I said, I dropped the ball. We have these pre and post tests that's part of the curriculum that we can use. So some of the teachers did some of their own pre and post assessing, and some did not.
So it didn't get tabulated into.
Pardon me?
So it didn't get tabulated, and we cannot see what the results were.
No.
Again, that's what we know we have. That's our next step. Next year, you will see information about where we're at. And we've been on quite a journey. I started this probably 3 years ago, and it's been building from the ground up. We recognize measuring progress. What gets measured gets done, so we know that.
So you mentioned that you have games that you send home, and you said that those games will come in 3 different languages. What languages are those?
English, Spanish, and Somali.
Then, how did you get the Somali translation?
Somebody in the district translated them for us. Same with the Spanish.
Thank you. Also, you talk about targeted services and then extended day program, right? How do you evaluate the effectiveness of the extended day?
Go ahead. The extended day, we were able to use more of the STAR data because the students are tested 3 times a year with the STAR data. So the coordinators from each site looked at their STAR data to see if that made an impact. And we don't have that data with us, so.
But based on your experience, what do you think that is the impact of that program? Is it really something that we need and we should be keeping, or it should be
Yes.
evaluated, or?
I believe it is something we should need. The evaluations I received were positive. They noticed a lot of growth based on that STAR data, and coordinators were really excited when I came to see them. They're like, oh my gosh, look at the math growth, or look at that literacy growth. They were very positive about it.
Okay, thank you. I want to give you kudos for your going out of school and going to the Promised Neighborhood. I think that that's a great way to extend programming. Is this the first time that you do that?
Yes.
Is this the only site that you're going out?
We went to 3 sites. We went to the Salvation Army, the Promised Neighborhood, and Westwood Village.
Yeah, thank you. And just to finish, so you have a list in one of your slides about the partnerships. You talk about Salvation Army, Promised Neighborhood, Yes Network, DNR. Could you please tell us a little bit more about what the partnerships do? Well, and besides Title I.
It depends on the partnership. The Salvation Army, when we did that camp, the program took place at the Salvation Army. Salvation Army staff worked in connection with district staff to provide the programming and provide the support for kids because they knew the kiddos. And the Promised Neighborhood also had a lot of Promised Neighborhood volunteers and employees that worked with the program, along with a teacher that was paid for by the district. The DNR worked with Clearview kids. They went out and worked in the Clearview Forest with them. I think I forgot to put St.Cloud Police Department. I know the St.Cloud Police Department provided a school resource officer when North did a bullying unit, so they could come in and talk about the legalities and the effects of bullying. The Yes Network not only provided the food, but they provided volunteers that taught art classes. There was a teacher from St. Ben's that works with the Yes Network that came in and did the art classes with the kids. So depending on, St. Cloud State had graduate students in the counseling program come out and work with various groups of kids in various sites. So depending on the organization they came from, they all did something kind of different.
Community Grassroots Solutions, Grace Barnyard, Sauk River Washoe.
They worked with Clearview. Grace Barnyard worked with Clearview, and I don't really know what they did. Community Grassroots Solutions would provide volunteers that would come out and work with the programs.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Thanks for the nice presentation, Pat and Rebecca. Was I correct in hearing 765 total students? 50 teachers, give or take 1 to 15? What do you think is the capacity of targeted services? What's your highest number you think you could handle?
Haven't really thought about that, but we certainly could. We would love to explore that. We think that we could at least double that, because I think one of our biggest issues that past few years is all the construction that's happening in various buildings. So for example, Talahi is usually a very large program. Talahi had to go over to Lincoln because of the roofing this year. That won't happen next year. They'll be back. So that's going to increase those numbers. And then Lincoln, this was the first year they've ever had a program. And they've been wanting to have a program, so it gave them an opportunity to actually have it. So I expect them to be in the mix as well. And so the last few years it's been north is at south, south is at north, and so we've had to really kind of probably pare our numbers down a little bit more, but we would like to at least double that, if not more. And we have to just make sure we've got space. And with that, we don't want to fill up our classrooms the way you would maybe during the school year, because this is the opportunity to have smaller class sizes. And so there's just a lot of variables that you need to think about when you're trying to do it, but we'd like to at least have a good, 1,500 kids in our summer school program.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry?
I have a data question, but before I ask the data question, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a test that could test whether the kid, as a result of your program, gets the I love to learn bug? And because I'm about to ask a data question, I don't want to diminish the joy that we saw on some of these kids' faces, because if you can get them excited about learning in a way that gets carried over to the regular year, probably nobody could stop them from learning even if we tried. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to emphasize also that part of what you're doing is creating learning attitudes that'll carry forward. With that being said, I'm of the impression that when kids take the STAR at the end of the year, it spits out, let's take math, some information that says, this kid is really strong in multiplying but doesn't understand, decimal points or whatever it might be. And the reason I ask that is because you mentioned not doing pretests, but would you get from the sending teacher any information about what that student needs, and would there be any connection between what the teacher discovered at the end of the year to, and again, I don't want to say that the rest of the summer should all be about kill and drill, but is there any information conveyed from the teacher on to you?
Yes, actually, the part that we didn't talk about is how are these students, how is it determined in the first place? So we look at STAR data, we look at classroom data. There's a lot of different ways that we can, because we don't want to have just one way of looking at kids. We want to have multiple ways of looking at kids. So the kids, the schools, depending on which school it is, everyone has to have a continual learning plan that's created for them. And that is what, in that continual learning plan, identifies what that student needs to be working on. And so that's what we use as our pre and our post. And what we need to do is shore that up. I'll be really honest about that part, because the continual learning plans are it's not easy to get schools to always give up that individual information. So that's a lot of what Rebecca does, is works with the schools to get those completed. They also have to be signed off by the parent, and that continual learning plan is actually good for the entire year. So it spells out what kind of support that student needs, and so we check up about a year later to see, or throughout the year actually, the school kids could be going to after school extended day programming based on that continual learning plan or an updated one.
Well, good, because as you may know, for a few months I worked with a group of bright math kids, really sharp kids. And when we were working, all of a sudden, one or more of them would have this huge gap of something they didn't know that was critical, that even though they were super bright and they could do all sorts of things and in math and science, but especially math, those little holes, if you don't catch them, can kind of, so the more you can do that, the great. Sounds like you're on your way doing that.
Bruce Henches.
Yes, Pat and Rebecca, I would add my thanks for your outstanding report and for the work that you have obviously been doing in putting the program together. I think that, again, I would echo the compliment regarding the partnerships that you've put together, that this district has put together to support students during the summer months. I understand and I know that that's a lot of work to do that coordination. I would make one request or suggestion, particularly when we take a look at the Packrat Bus, that if we could find a better way to coordinate that schedule, that bus schedule, with Promise Neighborhood, which we were able to stop at this year, but the Yes Network lunch program, and some of the other programs around the district. If we could coordinate those schedules, even more students would have access to the reading materials. And so congratulations on the work you've done, and keep developing the summer program. And I think it's a real positive reflection on the district, and I would have to say certainly on you, but district administration, that our commitment to help kids continue to learn throughout the summer months. When Leaf got involved with the expansion of the Packrat program into the summer program, and then to the district-wide summer program, it was based on two staff members, Beth Lovedahl and Sarah Martini, coming to us after having attended a conference. And they attended a conference on literacy, and I believe the researcher that they quoted was Richard Livingston. Is that right, Lori? I look at you. Alex, well, okay, whatever. But this research indicated that up to 85% of the achievement gap can be attributed to summer regression, especially for, well, I was going to say especially for kids who come from disadvantaged situations, which of course is what the achievement gap measures, because they don't have the summertime experiences that other kids do. And all of these programs taken together, I think, are a great example of ways that this district is providing supports for those students and encouraging year-round learning. I hope that we see the payoff of that on the STAR exams and ultimately on the MCAs if we need to in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and I think your example is an example of a partnership, because it just dawned on me that there's no reason whatsoever why we shouldn't have those Packrat buses at those schools once a week where those programs are going on. But it's sometimes that you get so far down in the like day to day, you don't, like, you got to stand back and think about it. So here's an example of, oh, now I have an idea, now we know what to do. How do we just need to work with the two individuals that are running the show over there, and they'll gladly do it. I know they will.
Right. Their schedules are coordinated as much as possible with the Boys and Girls Club programs in the schools, but not as effectively as they could be, or not with the Yes Network and some of the other programs that you're coordinating. So
there's a lot of opportunities there.
Right.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Just had one follow-up question. Explain to me, how are the students chosen? Is it all are welcome? Are they targeted students that need needs, or?
Yeah, I'll let you talk about the selection.
They're targeted students. When the school looks at the area that they need work on, they determine what they go with priority standards, or they pick the standards that they feel that their school needs the most work on, and then kids who are struggling with those standards are welcome. So if you're exceeding targeted services, maybe isn't a great spot for you. It's more to help the kiddos that need that extra support, that extra boost, and they use things like STAR scores, benchmarks, we used to call them Rigby's, GOMs, just oral reading fluency tests, things, teacher recommendations, so things that the kids are struggling on, they pull from the data to refer that way. Sometimes parents will request, and if the kid is struggling, then they will be part of it. And sometimes teachers will just say, hey, I've got this kiddo, they really need some help. But primarily we use those data points.
Got it. So we must have had a lot of kids this year that could have needed it that didn't?
Yes. Part of that was needing to find more staffing.
Yeah,
and,
okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Jerry?
So if we gave you enough money to put 1,000 kids in a full summer program, year-round school, do you think if we went down to the legislature and they gave it to us that we could close 85%? I mean, is that what we're saying? I'm not being skeptical. I just mean, what does your program cost to reach?
Actually, our program isn't any cost to the district. And so we'd have to, sit down with Amy, of course, and look at all of our budgets and see exactly where it came in at. And we're fortunate to have Title I that can help support some of this because that's a primary goal. And
I just mean, all this hand-wringing we do about we can't close the achievement gap, and are we really as close as that if the legislature just ponied up enough money to take the kids that are in the gap and give them year-round schooling, that we could, because the payoff of that would be, I don't know, I read something by the Annie Casey's Foundation about what we would, the wealth we would create in this country if we could do that, and it dwarfs any amount of money that could cost if that really is, I mean, it's something we should put, I always want to hand something over to the legislative committee, but really, if that's what it comes down to,
then we should try it.
we should be, seriously, we should be going down there and saying, let's give it a try.
I absolutely agree, and I think that we have a real opportunity because we have a lot of kids who, don't really have a lot going on in August to really beef up, and I would like to see, personally, more acceleration and not so much remediation, because if what they've been doing isn't working, then we need to figure out a better way. So maybe we need to accelerate them up to the next level rather than just keep repeating what they already didn't quite understand. And there's just a lot of different ways to come at this. And the really cool thing about summer is that you have ways to really work outside the box. The constraints that you typically have during the school year are far different in the summer. You just don't have those. You have, for us, I think our biggest thing was space, and it's busing. And then finding enough staff, but I think if you could help, staff could maybe think more creatively, maybe more staff would want to teach in the summer.
Mr. Chair, could I just follow up on what Mr. Von Korf was talking about with the legislature there? This is not a funding year. However, the off years are years where the legislature likes pilot ideas, great out-of-the-box ideas that if we could put everything we're doing in the summer into some kind of a document that would be easy to present and explain to the legislature, it could be possible that there could be some, at least we could make an attempt at some funding for a pilot, and then if we can show indeed that the research is accurate, that by eliminating the summer slide, you can cut into the achievement gap, maybe that is something.
Monica?
So following up Jeff questions about how do you get the kids to be in the program. You explained that they are the ones that have certain needs to be in the program. How did you do that with kids that were at the Promised Neighborhood or the Salvation Army?
It's the same.
It's the same. We still had the CLPs for each child. With the Promised Neighborhood, John works at Talahi, so he knew the majority of the kids. He knew what the focus was, and he did have the STAR data to back it, but many of those kids were just in that need area. The Westwood Village was slightly different. We have to do some tweaking on that. They kind of went door to door and said, "Do you want to go to summer school?" And the kids that wanted to go needed to be there. We did have the data, but we kind of did it backwards. It was a learning year for us that time. And the Salvation Army Smart Kids, I work with the tutors there during the school year, and all of those kids were kids that struggle in most academic areas, so that we could go pull data, but I also knew the kids ahead of time.
Bruce, did you have another comment?
I just have a quick comment following up on Jerry and Bruce's remarks. You certainly are not surprised that if somebody brings up the word legislature, that Bruce Moses isn't going to get in on this with an idea. And it may be a harebrained idea, but it's an idea. And this is what I have said before. The very people that mandate us so oftentimes to do things in education are never mandated to be here at these meetings. if I had my wish, I would like to see Jim Knobloch. I'd like to see Jerry Ralph. I'd like to see Congressional Representative Tom Emmer sitting in these audiences, not just this school district, but all school districts. Come to where the people are that are the smartest in education. Come here, legislators, and listen to the people that do this important work and change lives every single day. Come here and listen. I dare say you'll learn something. And that remark is obviously spoken now because it gets to go out on television. Somebody's going to call these people tomorrow and say, did you hear what Bruce Mose said? Yes, I am Bruce Mose, and I just said that. Mr. Knobloch, Mr. Ralph, Mr. Emmer, come here to these meetings. It's inconvenient, I know. But that is what makes it so valuable. Anything inconvenient has value to it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Have a comment? No? Okay. I guess my comment at the end here would be, I think that we're all, when I listen to what everyone is saying, I think everyone is saying pretty much the same thing. And that is that there's an awful lot going on out there in the schools in the summer. And it goes on within here, and when we listen to all of the things that are going on, it's almost overwhelming the amount of work that's being done in the schools and with kids in the summer. I always get the same feeling when I listen to the special ed presentations every year. It's so complex and so overwhelming that I can't even begin to comprehend it. And Bruce, I have had the same feelings. I wish that some of the legislators would come here. I won't only point at the Republican legislators, because there's a lot of Democrat legislators that could receive a lot of benefit from attending these meetings also. It's just the fact that if you don't sit here and if you don't listen, if you're not involved, like Carol is with special education or like you guys are with targeted services, if you're not involved with it, you don't see it. And if you don't see it, it doesn't happen. I mean, I would imagine that the average person in St. Cloud who gets in their car and goes to work every day has a couple of kids who perform well in school and don't need a lot of additional support. They have no idea that these programs are going on. Yet, if they did know they were going on, they would support them wholeheartedly, because you have to know that the kids that are attending these classes during the summer, they need these classes during the summer. It's what gives them some structure in the summer so that they don't just go out and join gangs and become hoodlums. But it's great work that goes on out there, and I think that, you know, the more we could do to publicize the fact that this stuff is happening, and the more that we could do within the legislature to make sure that there's funding available to make more of it happen, I think the better off we would be. So Rebecca and Pat, thank you for coming tonight, and thanks for presenting. And we will move to the next topic. Thank you. Next, Marcia Beisch will give us a summary of the August work session and a preview of the September work session.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, and members of the board. The August 9th work session included a proposed plan for addressing District Lake George properties. Superintendent Willie Jett presented a proposed process to develop the Lake George neighborhood properties owned by St. Cloud area schools, including Clark Field, Media Services, and Tech High School, along with ways to ensure that our community is involved in the conversations during each step of the evaluation and recommendation process. Mr. Jett stated that one of our priorities is to create an inclusive process for gathering input from the community as we evaluate options for the future of the Lake George properties. Mr. Jett also stated that he has and will continue to partner with Mayor Kleiss, whose leadership and experience are invaluable to the process, and that District 742 is committed to working closely together to do what's best for the neighborhood and the broader community. An inclusive, community-based task force will be created whose function will be to evaluate input, consider options, and provide recommendations to both the district and the city. The task force will be representative of diverse community interests, backgrounds, and experiences. One member of the Board of Education will be appointed to serve as a liaison to the task force, and 2 other members will be appointed to serve as participants. Superintendent Jett indicated that the first step as a district will be to hire a planner with experience in developing properties whose role will be to advise city and district officials and provide leadership to the task force. He also stated that after the task force has completed its work, he will present a final recommendation to the Board of Education. There was a break in the work session so that community input could be given, and then the work session reconvened. The other item on the agenda was the New Tech High School update. David Leopold, architect with IIW Minnesota, along with John Pfluger, architect with the Cunningham Group, and Andy Faulkner, ICS Consulting, presented updates of the estimate review, entry design, and schedule and permit process regarding the new high school. Mr. Leopold noted that a number of changes had been made since the schematic design. The schedule has been refined from 5 bid packages to 3, and the project design and development is further along, allowing for more accurate information and refined estimates. Andy reviewed that the overall estimate and budget summary, including building and site options, and Mr. Pfluger shared an update of the physical design of the entry of the new school, which includes an integration of both granite and wood. There was also an MCA updated provided by myself and Lori Posch, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. Highlights were shared and general trends regarding MCA data recently released by the Minnesota Department of Education were shared. The reading vision card is currently being worked on and will be shared at the September board meeting, and the math and science vision card will be shared at the October board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Amy Scalarud will give us an update on the final levy certification, or give us an announcement on the final levy certification.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, school board members. In order for the school district to certify and approve its annual levy, the requirement is to either hold a separate truth and taxation hearing or to approve the levy at a regularly scheduled board meeting, which is what we in St. Cloud do. We do it at the regularly scheduled board meeting, which again is scheduled to be held on December 21st at 7 p.m. here at City Hall. And then I just also want to note that the preliminary levy will be coming to the board in September for review. Any questions?
Is that truth and taxation hearing, is that at the December meeting or is that at the September meeting?
So we don't actually hold a truth and taxation hearing. The requirement is to do one or the other, to either hold a truth and taxation hearing or to have your levy approved at an already regularly scheduled meeting. So the final approval will happen at that December regularly scheduled second meeting, the Thursday meeting on the 21st. What will come forward in September is the preliminary levy, knowing that there's generally some minor adjustments between preliminary and final as MDE finalizes all of their calculations.
Thank you. Jeff?
Amy, is either meeting required to have public input?
No.
Thank you. Next, we're done with information items. Discussion and action items is item A is the bid award for the Tech High School bid package number 1, work scopes 1 through 6, and that would be Amy along with our architects and building managers.
Okay. Oh. We lost Willie. Are we good to go? We're good to go. Okay. We are here tonight to look at the bid results from the first of 3 scheduled bid packages for the new Tech High School. These bids were opened on Tuesday, and so we have just a little bit of background information just to review how the bid packages are broken up, and then we'll get into some details on the specific bid packages that were part of bid package 1 and the recommendations for award.
Good evening, school board. Is this one working as well? No.
I'm not sure, probably not.
I'm sorry. Okay. Good evening. So just to give you a quick recap here of where we've been so far, you've seen this slide in the past. It's the schedule. We have 3 bid packages. The first bid package, which was issued on August 1st, has 6 work scopes. We received the bids on Tuesday, and they included site grading, site utilities, fields, footings, foundations, the north and west. That is not true. Not the north and west entry. The north and west entry drives is what that is, not entries to the building, to clarify, and the parking lots. The next bid package we have coming out is to be issued on September 25th, which is bid package number 2, and that is, we're estimating 3 separate work scopes for that, which is structural steel, load-bearing masonry, and precast walls and floors. And then the final bid package will be issued November 17th, with bids received on December 19th, and we're estimating that's going to be 15 work scopes, which will be the remainder of the project, the exterior envelopes, the interiors, outbuildings, landscaping, site and field, mechanical, electrical, and that type of thing. Again, here's another slide you've seen regarding permitting. We've got some additional updates that we've achieved since the last time we met, one being the plat and subdivision agreement, which was approved on Monday, and everything else is in progress and tracking that you haven't seen previously. And this is just a general site plan now. To give you kind of an overview of this site, we can go back to this when we talk about the bids. So we're here today to discuss bid package number 1, bid results. This is the letter of recommendation that I sent to Amy for recommendation to the board, and here's a blow up of those recommendations. So I'm here today to ask for recommendation to approve work scope 1, which was earthwork, utilities, and the athletic field improvements to Peterson Companies for $7,921,300. Work scope 2, which is the north access road from 33rd Street to the property line, to Landwehr Construction for $672,000. Work scope 3, which is the footings and foundations to W. Goldman Construction for $1,985,089. The site concrete, which is sidewalks, essentially sidewalks, curb and gutter, miscellaneous hardscape concrete construction that you would see on the site, to Donlar Construction in the amount of $1,048,900. The asphalt paving, the parking lots essentially, and the trails to Knife River Corporation for $573,000. And work scope 6, which is the grandstands, bleachers, and the press box, to Seating and Athletic Facility Enterprises for $552,277.
Mr. Chair,
Bruce.
can we ask questions as they come up? Or,
Yes, we can.
just on work scope number 6, the grandstands, bleachers, press box, seating, and athletic facility enterprises. Could you define what's included in the athletic facility enterprises other than those?
The Seating and Athletic Facility Enterprises is the name of the company that was the low bidder on work scope 6. So work scope 6 is the grandstands, the bleachers, and the press box.
Okay. So it does not include, at this point, team rooms,
Correct.
those kinds of things.
Correct.
Is that just one set? Is that for the main athletic field, or is this including baseball fields and soccer fields? And
It includes the multi-purpose stadium and the baseball and softball. The varsity baseball and softball have bleachers shown on them right now.
I'd come back to that again. So, okay, so it includes site preparation. So does this include the artificial surface for the multi-purpose stadium.
Yes.
That is included in
Yes.
this bid. Okay.
And the track surface as well.
Smalls?
I'd just like to address item number 5 on that, the asphalt paving. At a previous work session, I believe it was, earlier in the summer, we saw a presentation about parking lots with paver blocks and things like that. Is this is asphalt paving now is replacing that paver block?
No, there's a combination of it.
Okay.
To achieve our site drainage on the project, we have areas of paved drain is what the product is. That's the paver block. It's kind of hard to see on this plan, but essentially in the main student lot, there's a large portion here and there's 2 large portions that are paved drain. There's a portion in the staff lot that is paved drain, and then also in this back lot, but the main driveways are all asphalt. So the design is that there's areas of asphalt that are sloped to that paved drain, so then the water soaks in through that and achieves our infiltration.
And just the clarification, please, because this has been posed to me in a series of communications from some persons in the community. How does that work with snow plowing? Do the snow blades catch on any of those paverings? I don't know that. I'm asking you.
They don't.
They don't?
No.
Okay.
They're very large pavers. They're set in a mat. They're beveled on the edges. They meet ADA compliance, and they're being used more and more frequently now because of the water infiltration requirements that are required on all new construction.
Thank you very much.
Shannon?
At our Wednesday work session, we talked about some, like the outdoor athletic facilities, the locker rooms, that we were going to put a alternate bid in their proposal. Where is that in here?
Those buildings were not bid at this time.
Okay.
What was bid as alternates that we're not recommending any award for at this time was sand-based performance fields. And we have time to make that decision because an alternate is good for 60 days per contract. I've spoken to Peterson Companies, the low bidder, and asked them if they would honor that alternate beyond that 60 days with the idea that we can get through bid package 3 and have everything out on the table and then make those decisions. So those are the alternates that were bid with this package only, and we're not recommending any of them to be approved tonight.
Okay, and then in another, like the September one, when are we getting other alternates proposals for like athletic facilities outdoors?
The rest of the alternates will come in bid package 3, which goes out in November and bids December 19th.
Okay, so then I guess my last question would be, when or how do we go about, are we looking at the total cost then and revisiting these alternates, the softball fields and stuff? When does that come back for discussion?
After bid package 3, we'll have all the alternates and we'll have multiple different spreadsheets and formatting to make those decisions.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Jerry?
Sometimes when I look at a bid package from the inside, I'm seeing, in addition to this information, that the architect has guesstimated what these bids are likely to come in. And from this tabulation, I can't tell whether the 7.9 million is $1 million over what you thought, or $1 million under, or right on the money. And I know you don't want to tell the bidders before the fact, but where are we on these bids in comparison to the architect's? Was it the architect that did
It was
this?
my estimate.
Okay.
Which is why I'm here.
Where are we with respect?
We are, for these 6 work scopes, so the estimate that I've presented to you guys, it wasn't just taking a line item and saying this costs this. I have to go through my estimate line item by line item to create what I expect the bids to come in at. For these 6 work scopes, these bids came in 3.3% underneath my estimate.
That's what I want to know. Thank you very much.
Bruce Henches?
Andy, could you just maybe for the people who are looking at this, outline the area of this property that the bids cover in terms of earthwork? Because it covers up to the ravine, is that correct?
No, it goes all the way to the south. This area down here, this square, has been targeted in the design as a borrow area. Our soil borings show that there's good soil down there, so the earthwork companies were able to include that in their bid, that they could use soil from that area for other spaces on the site. The engineer's estimate was that this site balanced, which means there's no need to haul in or out general material. There's obviously going to be haul in of specific rock and aggregate for underneath the track or underneath the paved drain, but in general, if we find bad soil and need soil correction, we can use soil on site in other areas for that.
So the earthwork on the school site will be complete. It will cover the entire acreage that is being developed.
Correct.
Okay.
Bruce Mose.
Let me just follow up quickly with what Mr. Henches was speaking about, and you spoke about that square site, that we can get material out of there. Are we putting anything back into that, or do we, okay, so we're not going to end up with a nice little lake, Tech Lake or something down there then?
No.
Okay, I'm so sad. Thank you very much.
Jeff.
I just had a couple questions. You corrected the slide at first saying north and west entrances?
I
Entries?
got confused when I read that. It means the drives in.
Okay.
Our entrance from 74 is included, and then work scope 2 is the north entrance.
Where's the west entrance in one of the work orders?
Pardon me? It is the north and west.
So it's just a typo. North access road. It should say north and west access roads. Correct?
Correct. We've been calling it the north access road because it's not the school's property. It's through the city property, so it's a north access road.
But we're actually talking two separate roads. A west road and a north road, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then 3.3% of what amount? What number? Where are you starting from?
My estimate amount was $13,188,385. Thank you. We take a lot of pride in our estimates. We put a lot of time into them, so to see this come back on bid day, we carry it through to our company.
You got
right?
lucky. You got lucky.
Thank you.
There's a lot of time spent on this. This isn't our first rodeo.
No lottery.
I'm going to test your math. What is that number? What is 3% of that, you know?
3.3%,
Yeah.
435,819.
35,000.
I have a spreadsheet here, so I'm not going to claim that I'm doing that in my head.
Thanks.
Jerry, did you have a?
No.
Oh. Monica, no?
I was just going to ask him, how many people get shovels when they do the groundbreaking?
Yeah, I'm just going to,
15.
so Mr. Chair, I mean,
Yes.
when you excavate that, that's not our job on the 28th, is to dig that hole and get the stuff out of there. The groundbreaking is not that, of course.
No.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions right here, I guess we're looking for a motion. The administration recommends that we approve this bid package. We're looking for a motion and a second.
Chair, I'd be happy to move approval of the bid package, bid number 1.
Jeff.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Okay, so we have Bruce and Bruce. With the motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Any further questions? If not, as soon as Monica gets back, we'll call roll. Or go ahead and start, and we can ask Monica when she gets back.
Maker of the motion, Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Second maker of the motion, Bruce Mose, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Jeff Pulrice.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz, how do you want me to proceed with that?
We'll give her a vote, right? When she comes back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
What else is on your chart? You have a pretty interesting, what else is on there? You had all kinds of numbers just.
it's my summary, to be honest with you. What my estimate amount was, what the low bid was.
So there is 15
percentage.
shovels on there?
Pardon me?
15 shovels?
No, I just know that from our coordination for the groundbreaking, that I was responsible for 15 shovels and 15 hard hats, so.
Notwithstanding my comment about your good luck here, I think we're all tremendously appreciative.
Thank you.
This is a huge project with lots of moving parts, and we're just really lucky to have people that, all of the people that are working on this that seem to be pulling it together.
Thank you, it's appreciated.
Updates on the stream crossing?
I haven't heard since, I've been pretty busy since Tuesday morning when this bid was getting ready to go out, so I know that speaking to the engineers from SCH on Tuesday at the bid opening, they were going to contact the DNR to see what the updates were this week, because they were supposed to have comments back from the public, I believe, or from the other entities.
Okay. Okay, we have 6 yes votes. Monica, you're
Monica
next.
Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
So the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is reports. First up is the superintendent's report. Mr. Willie Jett.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren and members of the board. First, Drew Erickson, a Tech junior, recently participated in the Minnesota All-State Choir Camp at St. John's University. Students attending the camp must audition and be chosen for the Minnesota All-State Choir. The camp ended with a performance at St. John's University featuring members from across the state. Congratulations, Drew. Next, student John Byen, student at Tech High School, auditioned and was accepted into the 2017-18 Minnesota All-State Orchestra violin section as a 9th grader this past spring. He participated in the All-State Orchestra Camp at the College of St. Benedict and will be performing again with the All-State Orchestra in February at Orchestra Hall for the Minnesota Music Educators Association Clinic. Congratulations, John. It's been kind of busy in the district, to put it mildly. Next week, we welcome back all district staff to a new school year. The back-to-school kickoff event for all licensed staff will be on Monday, August 28th, and for all non-licensed staff on Thursday, August 31st. Again, board members are invited to attend these events. And as a reminder, and we just got done talking about this, the groundbreaking ceremony for the new St. Cloud Tech High School will be on Monday, August 28th at 4:30 p.m. And as board members, you might want to wear your boots. And lastly, in consultation with Board Chair Al Dahlgren, board members Shannon Hawes, Bruce Mose, and Monica Segura Schwartz are appointed to participate on the community-based task force that will be created to evaluate input, consider options, and provide recommendations to both the district and the city for the future of the Lake George properties. Shannon Hawes will serve as the liaison to the task force. The plan is that during the month of September, I, as superintendent, in consultation with the mayor and city officials, will work to determine the membership of the community task force. The first meeting of the task force will be held in October. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you, Willie, and I want to point out that the groundbreaking ceremony for Tech is on the 28th, and it's open to the public. Anyone from the public that would want to attend that is welcome to come, and the parking, there's no on-site parking, so the parking has to be at Stride Academy, and there'll be buses that will shuttle people back and forth to the site from Stride Academy. So just to make that clear to the public and anyone who would want to attend. First up is the Board Development Policy and Governance Committee. Shannon Hawes.
We met this past Tuesday, a couple days ago, and we're working on our retreat. It is planned for Tuesday, September 19th, and we'll be meeting at the St. Joseph Government Center. The building opens up at 8 o'clock. We will be starting at 8:30, so if you arrive just after 8 o'clock, there'll be breakfast and coffee available there. We'll do 3 hours of a book study, which will be led by Katie Clandrud from the MSBA. We'll break for lunch, and then we'll come back. And we have a couple topics on the agenda, and I'm looking for any additional input before we finalize the agenda. Right now, we're looking at a math presentation and discussion, an enrollment update, and possibly discussion of targeted services Summer Academy. If anybody has any ideas for afternoon conversations, please let me know now or catch me before I finalize the agenda. Thank you.
Madam, can you repeat the agenda so far, please?
Sure. We have 3 hours in the morning that we're going to do our book study that is led, and it's for the key works. And then we're going to break for lunch. Then in the afternoon, we're going to have a presentation and discussion about math updates in the district. Then we're going to have an enrollment.
Can I interject a little bit? It's a strategy, or it's opportunity for the administration to share with us the strategy for math for this year. So we've seen really nice gains in reading, but we haven't seen the same gains in math. So it's an opportunity for us to have a discussion surrounding math and what our strategy is for this year and future years to help bring those numbers up in line.
And then an enrollment update and conversation about the enrollment in the district. And then possibly targeted services. Did you have questions or suggestions? And certainly you can connect with me later if you do.
Yeah, no, I just was wondering, that seems like a full agenda, and you're asking for other topics?
Or just if you had a suggestion instead of something that you wanted to discuss.
I did a back of the envelope calculation for 1,000 students, full summer. I figure $1.5 million. I mean, I really seriously would like, I think that goes with targeted services and, yeah, okay, good.
Bruce has a question.
If I just might raise a question. At our last retreat, we spent some time reviewing the committee structure of the board. I don't know, did we ever resolve everything, or is that a topic that we should revisit on an annual basis? I might have a suggestion for a potential board-level committee. And would that be the place to bring it, or should it be brought through some other process?
Go ahead, Al. We have talked about it a little bit here.
Okay.
We talked about whether or not that should be one of the topics on the workshop or on the retreat. Last year, we did make some changes to committees based on the discussions that we had. I think that last year they started around the topic of one of the board members wanted to eliminate one of the committees, and instead we revised that committee and he revised the purpose of that committee. But there were, I believe, two or three changes that came out of that discussion. I don't know if it's one that we want to have again this year or not, but we could at a workshop or something, I think.
Okay.
And I'm not saying no. I mean, if the board wants to have that as a discussion, we certainly can. So
I thought that part of that discussion was that we also needed to update the board governance handbook, and I don't know if that's been done.
it has not been updated, but that's the second half of the year. It's actually, I would say, the 2017-2018 school year project for the Board Policy and Governance Committee is to go through that set of policies, the governance policies. And we wanted to wait until after we had the key works discussion before we went through the policy governance policies, because that's part of, those were formed, I believe those were formed back when the board first adopted key works. So that was the thought on that.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest if we're going to take a look at committees, just based on the length of the discussion that we had last time, that it might be better for the Board Development Committee to work on it than that'd be my feeling.
So do you want to send me your suggestion? And
Yes, I
then-
could do that.
Okay.
One of the topics or areas that I would like to maybe have a discussion a little bit is about board liaisons with the schools, kind of looking at that role and maybe exploring possibilities of what that could mean in I don't know, other areas, partnerships and relationship with parents or, I don't know, effective work of the board.
We can, and again, we can discuss that, and we can discuss if we want to have that at the retreat, or if we would want to do that in a workshop setting. I know, was it 2 years ago, we revised the liaison policy to be a little bit more specific about what the role was of the liaison. But we can certainly have another discussion on it. I'm not.
And when we had that discussion, the superintendent, the principals, the executive team, they all had views. And so I think it's not an important views. So, I mean, I think it's, maybe the retreat's not the way to, maybe it be what the liaison does is either operational or linkage or policy, and I think people had a lot to say about what those boundaries ought to be.
Mr. Chair, if I could just say, it might be good, it wouldn't have to be a long discussion, but just to share what we all are actually doing as board liaisons, because that's kind of a gray area, I think, and maybe especially for new board members, I don't know, but in terms of what should the involvement be, I know that it's in the policy handbook, but I would support a discussion of it if anybody else is interested in that.
Yeah, and I believe that the policy, when the policy got changed, it was an attempt to make it so that it was a less operational relationship, and where we aren't getting involved in decision-making for the school, and we aren't the contact person for all of the parents and teachers, but to make it more of a presence or a visibility position within the schools. But we can certainly have a discussion on it. I'm not suggesting anything other than that. I just want to make clear that we did discuss it a couple of years ago. Jeff?
Yeah, if possible, I agree with Monica. That would be a nice topic to have, and it could be a short one. I mean, not only what we're doing, but what is being done. I mean, maybe we can learn from the more experienced board members, and I think it'd be fruitful.
We can add it.
If there was time, it'd be nice.
Yep. Any more, Shannon, from the governance committee?
No, that's good. I'll send the agenda out and the times.
All right, next is the Community Linkages and Engagement Committee. Bruce Mose.
Mr. Chair, the Community Linkages and Engagement Committee did not meet at its regularly scheduled meeting in August. However, we are meeting in September 15th, our September meeting. I'm proposing to the committee in a communications that I'm sending out that the committee will examine our purposes and goals as stated currently and assess our effectiveness thereby in addressing and achieving those aims. So that will be what we will be doing at our next meeting. However, in terms of our engagement in the past weeks, the chair has attended a community conversation at the St. Cloud Public Library along with member Monica Segura-Schwartz, a conversation on equity and access for immigrant students in our school district, and that was a spirited conversation. The chair also participated in an engaging manner the activities of the Tech Centennial celebration on July 28th and 29th. We had about 3,000 people that attended the Friday evening events at Lake George, and we had 150 people at the banquet on Saturday evening. And I think a fair analysis of that was that it was a very, very well attended and it had great worth to all persons that attended that and reminisced and spoke about Tech High School. Also, I want Mr. Polreis to speak briefly here on some of the engaging things that he has participated in.
I, along with Superintendent Jett, attended the grand opening of the community outpost down by the Boys and Girls Club. That was well received. A lot of people were there. Great facility. I think it's going to make some great changes for that neighborhood, so that was awesome. While I was down there, I kind of moseyed over to the Boys and Girls Club to talk to Mark Sacre, and unbeknownst to me, he was doing a private tour, so he invited me in on that. The private tour that he was doing was U.S. Representative Emmer was in there, so I got to talk to Mr. Emmer about education for about a half hour, and that went pretty well, actually. And then just recently, board member Bruce Henches and myself attended the session up at the Scholastica Learning Resources Building in Sartell, where Commissioner Brenda Castellius did a presentation, and that was also very interesting. So, attended those 3 events.
So, Mr. Chair, that is the conclusion of the Community Linkages and Engagement Committee report.
Thank you, Bruce. Next, we'll have Finance and Audit. Jeff Polreis.
We did have kind of a lengthy meeting. We met on August 17th. I did hand out notes, so everyone has a copy. President of the meeting was Board Member Jerry Von Korf, Board Member Bruce Henches, Amy Scullerud, Willie Jett, James Newman, and myself. We did have some guests in the room, Jackie Knowles from Bergen KDV. It's an auditing firm that's doing our audit, Gary Ganji. Observers in the room were Jenny Berg from the St.Cloud Times, Scott Andreasen, and Ruth Kaksor, community members. Kasor. The audit process, Jackie reviewed the plan for the 2016-17 audit. Next up on the agenda was the Midtown lease extension. The current lease for space at Midtown expires on June 30th of 2018. The anticipated completion date for core review is June 1st. So Amy would like to extend the lease there, and we're going to have 3 options. For moving into core review might take some time to move in, also to accommodate any delays in the construction schedule. Monthly cost per the extension would be about $6,000 a month. Amy's going to find out if we can extend the lease through July 2018 with the option to add August 2018 if needed. This will come to the board for approval as a consent agenda item in the future. We did have a very lengthy discussion about funding for the Inspire one-on-one program. Mr. Ganji reported that we are going into our 4th year of the Inspire program and reviewed funding options for the 2017-2018 and 5 years after. The costs in the past 3 years have come out of the fund balance as one-time monies, while it was decided whether or not the program should continue. We would be purchasing iPads for the 6th grade students and MacBooks for 12th and 9th grade students. We have the option of purchasing the iPads and MacBooks outright for approximately $1.25 million, or doing a lease for purchase, which would mean an expense of $480,000 for the school year 2017-18. This could also be funded with one-time money from the sale of Colts Academy. The committee discussed how the lease for purchase may affect future budgets. Gary will find out the cost of a termination clause in the lease for the purchase agreement, how much that would cost. Gary would like the expense approved at the August 24th meeting. That has changed. The committee asked that there would be a recommendation by the administration at the August 24th meeting. I think that also changed. Next up on the agenda was an update on the number of open enrolled students coming back into District 742. It was known that we are making the necessary adjustments for the students returning to District 742 that had open enrolled elsewhere. We had to wait to see how many of these students would be returning before adjustments could be made, and it's an ongoing process. Right now, that number is roughly 218, but could fluctuate between now and the beginning of school. Most of these students are coming back at the secondary level. We did talk a little bit about the new committee for Lake George properties. Superintendent Willie Jett has been discussing committee membership with Board L Chair. As we all know, those members and chair have just been announced to tonight's meeting. Last but not least, Minnesota School of Business modification budget. Amy reported that the closing date has been set for the end of September for the purchase of this building. As we would need to begin modifications as soon as possible, she would like to determine an approximate project budget so the architect could be hired to do the plans. The architect fee is based on a percentage of the budget, and this percentage will vary depending on the size of the budget. Amy is estimating that the maximum for this project would be $1 million. The committee agreed that for the purpose of hiring an architect, this maximum is acceptable. End of report.
Jeff?
Yes.
When you mentioned the August 24th dates a couple times and you said has changed, I believe we're going to do that as in the next work session.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up is the Legislative Committee, Bruce Henches.
Mr. Chair, the Legislative Committee will be meeting tomorrow because of some conflicts. We had to delay our meeting, and we will begin drafting of the legislative platform for the 2018 legislative session. And we will be reviewing the AMSD, the platform ideas that AMSD gathered through their statewide survey as we begin to do that. One of the other things that we will be doing is discussing the new Every Student Succeeds Act and two letters that we have received, one from Minnesota School Boards Association and the other one from AMSD. The MSBA is suggesting that school board members write to Commissioner Casalius. AMSD is asking for input on a draft letter from AMSD regarding some concerns, and there are a number of them, but some concerns that AMSD and school board has with the new law. And the two letters really focus on the same things. I've left a copy of the draft that was sent out by Scott Kroonquist from AMSD on your table in front of you, and I just want to cover on the second page of it, I've highlighted the key points that both MSBA and AMSD are raising regarding the Every Student Succeeds Act. And I've highlighted the points in pink. And the first one is that Minnesota law grants parents and students the right to opt out of the MCA exams. However, the new state plan will count any student who opts out as in the non-proficient status on the exam. Obviously, that will work to the detriment of schools that have kids who opt out. The second point, academic achievement will be measured by the students who meet or exceed standards. All other students, including partially meets students and those who do not participate, will be counted as not proficient. The position of AMSD is that an achievement indicator that does not differentiate between a student partially meeting standards and not meeting standards is a flawed indicator. And then the last point that I would make down at the bottom, the number of schools identified for support is expected to grow from 85 to, Commissioner Casalius the other night said, between 300 and 400 schools. 200 high schools. Well, guess which ones they're going to be? They're going to be ones with significant numbers of kids from low income and other disadvantaged backgrounds. The interesting thing is there is no additional funding for support to schools that need support. Yet, the support is going to be required. So it really ends up being yet another unfunded mandate that can be added to the special education cross-subsidy and the EEL cross-subsidy. And so AMSD is taking a strong position, as is the Minnesota School Boards Association, regarding implementation of the ESSA in Minnesota. Now, my question that I wanted to bring tonight is, does this board want a letter sent in its name to the commissioner regarding the issues with ESSA? Now, as I mentioned, the Minnesota School Boards Association sent out their sample letter to all school board members and said, hey, school board members, send a letter. AMSD is planning to send a letter representing AMSD. My question is, if we agree with the points in the letter, would we as a board want to have a letter sent? If so, by the way, it has to be done quickly. In other words, it would need to be done after our meeting tomorrow, because the commissioner is taking input on ESSA through the 31st. And then the Minnesota plan has to be to the federal government by September 15th. So we're really short on time, and it would be just an opportunity for us to make our feeling known that we have concerns regarding implementation of this new Every Student Succeeds law.
I would say, yes, that would be a good thing.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Henches, are you asking if we will support the AMSD letter? Not the, haven't seen the MSBA letter, but is that what you're asking?
Basically, yes. What I'm, let's see, I think that any development of this in the legislative committee would end up being very similar to this, perhaps without some of the information that's on the front page.
I'm supportive of, let me just say where
Yes.
I am.
Yep.
I'm supportive of what's in pink. If you're going to get rid of the front, I don't care, but I don't feel that you should be able to add new points without bringing it back to the board.
Would the board support, if we come up with a letter tomorrow, if we send the letter out to all board members over the weekend? It would be from the legislative committee, but we would indicate that it represents the board if all board members responded that they're comfortable with the letter.
Yeah.
You have no idea what additional points you might add?
No, I, at this point, don't, but perhaps some comment that brings this issue down more to our district.
I was going to say,
Impact.
what I would want to see is like Minnesota law grants parents and students the right to opt out of the MCA exams. However, the state would count these students as not proficient.
Right.
In St. Cloud, that would affect how many students? And
Actually, we probably.
Not many.
We probably look better.
Yes.
Compared to some other schools. This
Depending
would actually
upon-
be a good thing for us to go out.
Depending upon how you define better, Mr. Van Clark.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's, the movement is in the Twin Cities.
Yes.
well, but
And-
either
and
way,
east from
it's going to be a
Minnesota.
negative effect.
Yes.
Yeah, it may be smaller here, but it's still going to be a negative effect. And so then the next one is the achievement indicator that does not differentiate between a student partially meeting. How many is that
Okay.
in St. Cloud? I would just think that you'd want to
Try to get some of
give
that.
the St. Cloud story, not the,
And I'm going to mention
Right,
in my report that you all have on your desk for reading, math, and science, the breakout exceeds, meets, and so you can look at that for all three of those and get an idea, and it is significant. I mean, really significant. you're treating, it's kind of like a teacher treating a kid that got a 70 as if they got a 0.
Right. Well, we will move by the commissioner's own estimation from 85 schools identified as needing support to 300 to 400 public schools.
So
There's something wrong with that.
So I just want to say I'm really supportive of this. I mean, this is, what they are doing here is right in the teeth, the negative teeth of the best information on on educational statistics, of giving you no credit for being 1 point behind proficient. So I'm just saying, if there's some other big issue, then I'm not prepared to support it unless I know what the heck it is.
Unless you see it. Got that. We will, if we can come to an agreement tomorrow, we will send it out to board members.
And maybe this isn't the place for it, but would it be appropriate to include, because it is such a large number in our district, a message on the correlation between ESL and MCA? But when you count our ESL students that are not proficient, that drives our number up significantly.
I think certainly a comment that the demographics of a school district impacts the MCA score.
That speaks more to the St. Cloud School District story.
And
to
that,
personalize it.
by the way, is a recommendation of the EELL working group. I sent that around. I mean, I didn't expect everybody to read it, but that's an element of the state ELL advocacy group. Why are you measuring kids who are just learning English as if they should be already proficient?
Another thing,
it seems to be falling on deaf ears at the state. It's almost like in one ear and out the other.
When you look at the goals of the new law, they're admirable. The first goal is to encourage well-rounded students. And the second goal is equity. The problem is they have not, as of yet, come up with a way to measure well-rounded students in any kind of a reportable manner. And the commissioner said they are still working on that, and they're committed to doing that, but that's some time down the line. And so the negative impact of the new law will be more immediate, and perhaps the good parts of it might take years to develop.
But if I've been listening in the last school board meetings, we have data that shows that students who have emerged from the ELL programs actually perform better on the MCA tests than the kids who are still in the program. Or they perform better than the kids who were never in the program, but who grew up around speaking English. Yeah. And so counting kids who are still in the program as not proficient simply because they don't speak English just doesn't make sense. And I mean, I wouldn't miss an opportunity to say that to the people at the state. So that should be a part of the,
My very point earlier, be sitting right in here. That was the reason I made that point,
yes,
Mr. Chair.
Okay. We'll see if we can put something together, and we will send it out to the board before we would send it representing the board.
Personnel and Negotiations Committee, Monica.
We had no meeting this month. We're still in negotiations.
And lastly is the Achievement, Integration, and Equity Committee, Jerry Von Korf.
Mr. Chair, the committee, myself, Monica, Bruce Henches, Marcia, Dr. Beisch, Dr. Huff, and Sebastian Witherspoon met on August 23rd. At the meeting before that, Monica made a great suggestion that we have a discussion about what our committee priorities were. I collected from all of the members and also from Dr. Beisch and Sebastian a unedited list. So I took everybody's suggestions. Marcia and I sat down and I asked her to look at how that list fit in with the things that her department was doing, so that we weren't asking her to do reading 6 months away from when they're actually doing reading. And the document that you have on your desk is our secretary's minutes. I haven't changed it, and the committee hasn't seen it, but we just met yesterday. The first list is just a list. It's not a prioritized list. And then down at the bottom and on the other side is a list of what she took down as the schedule of things that we're going to be looking at. We're going to start looking at the reading vision card before it comes to the board, the math and science vision card. In November, we're going to be talking about issues surrounding the Cruz-Guzman litigation, which is being argued in the Minnesota Supreme Court sometime in the fall, but it deals with a complex set of issues, but it's a suit that seeks to use the Minnesota Constitutional Education Clause to require, to end de facto segregation of schools in the Twin Cities metropolitan area. And then December, we're going to be talking about advanced learners and first-generation students, and what are we doing to get them ready for after high school. And the rest is of the list you can figure out yourself. I've also put on your desk two memos that I prepared out of the 2017 Minnesota Department of Education proficiency results for reading, science, and math. And you will see this is material that we, the board, don't get to see until it comes in the newspaper, so we can't play with it. We're not allowed to play with it. We're not allowed to but I hope you'll find the compilation that comes out of this kind of interesting. And you'll see that for some of the categories, I've provided you the breakout. This is a new breakout that did not used to be on the MDE website, but it breaks out, for example, on that first chart for all students, everybody in District 742 in the state, reading proficiency exceeds, meets partially, and not meeting the standards at all, whatever exactly that means. It's I'm not quite clear. That table is the table that Al and Bruce are kind of complaining about, because if you compare a school district like Edina that has 0% homeless and 4.5% free and reduced lunch and a couple percent of English language learners, and you'll aggregate that all together and you compare it to St. Paul that has 75% free and reduced lunch and 2% homeless and a huge number of English language learners, and then you put the two charts next to each other, and people say, oh my goodness, why is St. Paul at 37% proficiency and why is Edina at I think they're at 70% proficiency for all students, and really, when you make that comparison, that's, you cannot tell from the way the state does how districts are actually doing with the challenges that they have. I just want to point out 3 things that I put in those. One is, it's not reported, but it can be calculated. I asked, what is the reading proficiency rate for students in District 742 if they are not free and reduced lunch? Not free and reduced lunch eligible, and our proficiency rate for those students is higher than the state average. And if you were to compare to the nearest district to us or to the 2 charters, it would be significantly higher. But this is something that people don't know because you can't see it on the website. The same with our free and reduced lunch students who are not English language learners. Both in science and math, their results are either marginally higher than the state or equal to the state level. Again, something that you just can't tell by going to the state website or the newspaper that I'm not trying to throw under the bus, but because they get that information from the state. The state doesn't give it to them, so that they can't give it to us. In math, I may have misspoken in math, whereas our free and reduced lunch kids are higher than the state average, we are 11 points lower. And if we were looking at that and just looking at that one thing, we'd say, well, that's because they're free and reduced lunch kids. But our free and reduced lunch kids in reading are doing better than the state average. And so it tells us that we can do some things with those kids, and that there may be some things. And when I say that, frankly, I'm not picking on teachers, because I don't think the research tells us that difference comes from teachers. I think it comes from, and we can have this discussion, I hope we will have this discussion, I think this difference comes from the board, the superintendent, the executive team, the principals, and the curriculum. I think it has to do with professional staff development. I think it has to do with what we arm our teachers with, not who our teachers are. And I think, and this is just kind of an editorial, but Bruce Hench has got his editorial, and I think it was a good one, that it offers a chance for us to be thinking about, are there things that we can do in this area that make a difference? That's my report.
Thank you. And that is it for our committee reports. Next on the agenda is the future agenda items, and we're looking at the next work session where we'll have a new high school update, and we're also going to have an update on the Quarry View Education Center. It also lists on here an annual superintendent's evaluation that may actually get pushed out one more month to October. Now, at this point, I'm looking for a motion to close the meeting for the purpose of negotiations strategy. Oops, Jeff.
Can I ask one question about future?
Yep, sure can.
Could we request from the architects that any pictures we now see are more accurate? You know what I mean, like not 12 tennis courts, but 8, the right fields, so we could starting to get a better visual? Because some of them were still dated, some of the slides they were showing us.
Some of them that they're showing now?
Well, tonight was a little bit, there was a couple things that were inaccurate on that slide.
Such as, I guess.
Well, the tennis courts, that kind of stuff.
Just
a general question.
Request, yeah.
Okay, nothing specific.
You mean the schematic?
Yeah.
They should be showing accurate. That was an accurate one that was the first one that I've seen that had the stuff down at the south end.
That was the first one there, but how many tennis courts are we having? 8.
We're gonna have 8, and there's
There was
room for
12
12.
on
Well,
there.
it's 8, but yep, I believe that when they're doing the site work, they're doing preparation for an additional 4 courts.
Okay, with
So
the
the-
cement work? Or
I don't know,
At
if
least
it's
leveling
with the
the ground?
groundwork, with
Okay.
the groundwork, they're,
just a suggestion?
yeah. But I think that what he showed tonight, I think, is the one, the most current one that he's working off of. So his schematic would show 12 tennis courts, because when they do that earthwork, they're going to make it for 12, so that when at some point in the future, in 5 years, 10 years, when the board says, we want to make it 12 courts instead of 8 courts, it's a matter of going in there and paving it, and the earthwork is already done. So I think what he showed was accurate, but, yeah. And then on the website for the district, because it has a historical, I mean, when Tammy puts something on there, it's just the next workshops, but all the old ones are still there. Those older ones would show the older schematics and things, but I think that they're trying to keep them as updated as they can. So, looking for a motion to, yes, Monica.
I move to go into a closed session.
Okay, so Monica moves to go into a closed session for the purpose of,
With the purpose of discussing strategies and negotiations.
Second.
so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion before we go into closed session? Mr. Mose, would you take a roll call?
Maker of the motion, Monica Seguda Schwartz.
Yes.
Second maker, Jerry Van Korf.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Jeff Pulroyce.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren. Bruce
Yes.
Mose, yes. And Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to move into closed session. When we come back from closed session, anyone who wants to stay is certainly welcome to stay and sit out here. When we come back out, I will do nothing more than open the meeting so that we can adjourn. So at this point, we're moving into closed session.